wasting money. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deeper seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. But time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Good morning, everybody. It is John here from Tutor to welcome you along to another of our GCSE Economics live streams, a revision blast, and today we are concentrating on production. So we've got about 15 to 20 minutes of fast-paced activities looking at production. I'm joined today, as I have been last week and hopefully for many more occasions, by Nicky. Good morning to you, Nicky.
Good morning, everyone.
And I hope, Nicky, like everybody who's watching this, if you're watching this live, you're having a pleasant Easter break of some description.
Absolutely. It's not long now, so getting near.
Absolutely, yeah. We're not far away, but hopefully you're managing to combine a little bit of revision with a bit of downtime and some enjoyment as well. So, if you've not watched one of these before, we've got, like I say, 15 to 20 minutes of pretty quick activities. We would love to see some responses to anybody who's watching this live. We know we've got, just looking down at my clock here, I know we've got plenty of people who are with us live. If you're obviously watching this on replay, then you can take your time over some of the questions. We're going to be using a PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint will be available for you to download as soon as this live stream has finished. I think that's everything that we need to get through. Are you ready, Nicky? Shall we get started?
Certainly. Let's get cracking.
Brilliant. Okay. Right, we're going to start, as we often do with these GCSE revisions blasts, with a quick true or false question. Two or three true or false questions, and you can use either T or F or true or false, or, as is the idea behind this little activity, a little smiley emoji or a frowny emoji. Smiley emoji if you think the statement is correct, frowny emoji if you think it's incorrect. So let's have a look at this first statement. Division of labour is a method of improving productivity. Let's have a look to see if we've got Jasmine and Janine back. Lovely to see you both. and you've both gone with true. Percy's coming with true as well. Let's have a quick look at the answer then. Well done to those of you who have taken part so far. Let's have a look. Absolutely. Of course it's true. Of course it's true. So what was important with that statement, of course, is an understanding of those two key phrases, division of labour and productivity. And we'll come back to both of them as this revision blast goes on. But if you think about division of labour in particular, that's that concept of giving workers very, very specific tasks. So you have enough workers to give them specific tasks. And if somebody repeats something regularly, they're more likely to do it more effectively and efficiently, which should improve productivity. Brilliant start. Well done, everybody. Let's try another one of those. Increased productivity can make a business more competitive. So if productivity is about efficiency, and like I said, we'll come back to that question a little bit later on. If productivity is about efficiency, does that necessarily lead to an improvement in competitiveness? Great to see some answers coming in again. Jasmine, Janine and Percy, wonderful. We'd love to see as many people put their responses in there, true, false, whatever you think. I think that's definitely true. Well done to those of you who have gone with that one. Absolutely true. So what we expect with productivity is a fall in costs. Now, that's great if a business then passes that fall in costs on to a fall in price. And if prices are coming down, then a business becomes more competitive. It's one of the drivers for becoming more productive, that if you can reduce your costs, you can reduce your prices and therefore make your sales a little bit more competitive and more likely to get an increase in sales. Well done. Let's try one more of those before we move on to multi-choice questions. An increase in sales always leads to an increase in average revenue. Now, if you're gaming this activity today, the first two were true. So would John go with a third true answer? If you're gaming this one, have a think about that one. But the reality is really what you should be doing is having a look and thinking about the question. Janine says false, not always. Not always. False depends on costs. Comes back from Jasmine. Brilliant, wonderful. Exactly the kind of nuanced answer I was after, actually. So yes, the answer is false if we just look at it from a binary way of answering that question. But the reality is it's generally false, but not always. Sometimes the only way that business can increase sales is by reducing prices. It isn't the only way that they can increase sales, but it is one of the primary ways. That will mean that output and sales will increase, but that the average revenue will decrease because we've reduced those prices. Wonderful stuff. Brilliant stuff. Brilliant start, Nicky. What did you think?
Very good. I like the answers to that third one, weren't they?
Let's
Brilliant.
see how they get on with the slightly more tricky multi-choice questions, though.
Okay, 5 multiple choice questions here. So we're going to start with some relatively easy ones and work up to quite a tricky one at the end. So there's a really important, you've got to be careful with the question here. There's 2 very important words there. It's most and many. So which of the following is the most likely objective for many businesses? So you have to just be a little bit careful here, because actually as you read through it, you'll see that all of them are objectives for businesses. But so we have to reread the question, make sure that we're looking at it carefully and saying which is the most likely for many businesses or the majority of businesses. Now, in economics, we make a basic assumption that businesses wish to make profit. So the answer is C. Well done, Jasmine. Well done, Percy. So you just got to be a little bit careful not to jump at the first thing and read the question very, very carefully. Well done, Naima. Nice to see you with us. Okay, let's crack on with question number 2. What is average cost? So here we're testing your knowledge on costs. Remember, costs are either fixed costs or variable costs. We have to know the difference. We have to know what total cost is, but we also have to know what average cost is. So average cost is really important for a business to know, because they have to know if they're going to make 50 units, what is the cost of 1 unit when they make 50, but what happens to that cost when they make 100? What happens to that cost when they make 10 units? So you're absolutely right. You're all coming in with the correct answer. Answer is B, total cost divided by the number of units produced. That's absolutely essential formula that you have to know. Well done. Let's move on to question 3. Now, productivity. John's already talked about productivity. So many times, and I see it with my A-level students as well, both in business and in economics. They mix productivity with production. Very, very different. Production is output. Productivity is speed. We're talking about the efficiency. So what is productivity? The level of efficiency in the production process. Be very careful not to fall into that trap of what some of my students do. Well done. Look at these fabulous answers coming through. Rattling through these questions, Jon. What is the formula for calculating profit? Now, again, this tests your knowledge because so often students mix up revenue with profit. They are very, very different. And as students of economics in production, you have to know the difference. So Jasmine, Janine are coming in with A. They think it's total revenue minus total cost. They are spot on. You're absolutely right. It's all the money into the business, total revenue, minus all the money going out, total costs. So that gives you profit. Profit is very different from just revenue, so be careful. Right, I did say number 5 was quite tricky. Here we go. But I do think some of you already know what you're on about with average revenue. The question is, which of the following could lead to a decrease in average revenue? Now, we talked about average cost before. Average revenue must be total revenue divided by the number of units. So which of these would lead to a fall in average revenue? Bit more tricky. So let's have a look at some of the answers coming in. Jasmine thinks it's C, decreasing prices. Janine thinks it's A, so we have to decreasing sales. So this is where it's a little bit tricky. We have to think about it. We need a decrease in average revenue. So it's total revenue divided by output. How are we going to get that to shrink? The answer is C, decreasing prices. Well done. Is it Kremeg? Is that how am I pronouncing that properly? So the answer was C. Jasmine, well done. You did know that from the outset. Well done. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Jon.
Great answers coming in there, Nicky. And I think it's worth thinking about those multi-choice questions just for a few moments, which is that multi-choice questions are often there to distract, aren't they? And the incorrect answers are about distraction, which is why those questions very much had very plausible incorrect answers, didn't they? And it was lovely to see that lots of people were paying very careful attention to the correct and incorrect answers. Wonderful stuff. Right, we will move on to another question. This time we're going maths based. We know if we are going to be dealing with the topic of production in our exam, there's a very good chance it'll require some kind of calculation. So it's important to know what those various costs and revenues are, how we calculate them, and then to be able to calculate them accurately, but also with a degree of speed. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to make four very, very quick calculations in the space of 1 minute. And that 1 minute has already started. It is already started on the clock. So if you think you can work these answers out, put them into the chat window. A equals, B equals, C equals, D equals, as many of those as you can do in the 60 seconds for this activity. Quite a bit more tricky in terms of the time required. Very little time given to you to have a go at these. Have a go at that one. Let's see what we get coming in to the chat window. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Janine. Challenge yourself. It's the answers aren't difficult in terms of the numbers, but the speed with which you have to do it is a bit more tricky. Wonderful. Thank you for the responses that came in there. Like I say, the maths behind this is not too tricky, but we know if you read any of the examiners' reports coming through, whichever your awarding body, they talk regularly about how frequently students make relatively silly mathematical errors. And it's just that little bit more tricky when it's presented in the way that I presented it there, where you have to make the calculation rather than as part of a multi-choice question, where you know the correct answer is there and you work things out and you find the correct answers. So let's have a look at those answers. I'm having a quick through those of you who had a go that, and you were pretty good and pretty spot on there. So A was looking for the total cost for an output of 0. We know that total cost adds total fixed costs and total variable costs. At output 0, our total variable costs should be 0, so 70 plus 0 equals 70. B was looking for the average cost at output 2. So average cost takes our total costs divided by the output, 100 divided by 2, which equals 50. C was looking for total variable costs. So we've already mentioned about fixed and variable costs. We've got another question coming up on those in a few minutes' time. So our total variable costs, we've got our total cost. If we take away our fixed cost from that total cost, we're left with 60, which must be our variable cost, therefore. And the final one then was just average revenue, taking our total revenue and dividing it by our output of 5. So 300 divided by 5 would give us 60. Brilliant stuff. Well done, everybody. Tricky stuff when it comes to the math side of things. But there we go. Brilliant stuff. Okay, hand over to Nicky for the bubble quiz.
Definitely my favourite. I love the bubble quiz. Really makes you think. So remember that it's a little bit like multiple choice in that there's a question and the answers are presented, but it could be that one answer is correct, 2, 3, 4, or even none. So don't forget that it might be no answers. So our first question up this morning, which of these may be considered ethical considerations for businesses during production? So as we know, businesses are under more and more pressure to be ethical. So which of these would actually qualify? What we're looking for in the answer is the letters that correspond to the right answers. Remember, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be all of them, it could be none of them. So which of these do we think is ethical? Businesses have to think about. So Jasmine's straight in with A, B, and C. Janine agrees with B, C, A. So you're not thinking D at the moment. Percy thinks the same, A, B, and C. So let's have a look, John. It is actually all of them. Now, you might not have considered D. And if you are an owner of Amazon or Starbucks, and then you are avoiding tax left, right, and centre, perhaps, she says, ook, but actually paying your fair share to the central government is considered ethical. So don't forget that one, slipped in there. So D is also an ethical consideration. Let's have a look now at which of these might be considered methods of improving productivity. So we've talked about productivity a lot this morning. It's important. So we need to think about which of these would help speed up the production process, make it more efficient. So which do we think? Alan's come straight in with all of them. Greater use of technology, training workers, more effective management, and taking advantage of bulk purchasing raw materials. Percy said all. Now, just have a little think. I know that one of those there will be very familiar to you, but think about, is it going to make the production process more efficient? We're not talking necessarily about costs at this stage. We're just talking about efficiency. So, John, if we could have the answers. The answer is actually just A, B, and C. Now, D, taking advantage of bulk purchasing of raw materials, is in fact an economy of scale. That will reduce your average cost, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to speed up or improve your production process. So just be very, very careful there about the difference between productivity and economies of scale. Talking of which, here we go. Next question. Which of these is an example of a type of economy of scale? Now, if you know your economies of scale well and you're able to give me the answer, I want you to have a think about which important one is actually missing from our bubbles. So if you give me your answer, whatever you think it is, say B, C, and D, and then put the extra one. So Charlie, what do you think's the one that's missing from those bubbles? What do you think is missing? Percy, you think that they're all economies of scale? Which one's missing? Which one would you add if you were in an exam? So let's have a look at the answer, please, John. You are right, you guys. They are all economies of scale: purchasing, marketing, risk bearing, and managerial. But there's an important one missing. If anyone in the next couple of seconds thinks, oh, technical, says Percy. Yes, that is. It's a more tricky one, but you're absolutely right. The one that is missing, that's an important one, is actually financial. So financial economies of scale. Don't forget that one. It's really important too. Okay, let's move on to bubble quiz number 4. Which of these is an example of a variable cost in a car maintenance garage? So car maintenance, they fix your car when it goes wrong. They mend your car. Which of these are variable costs? So remember I mentioned earlier what costs can be divided into fixed or variable. Which one of these? So let's have a think. Jasmine thinks B and D. So remember, a variable cost will actually will be variable as you increase your output. So in this case, the garage mends more cars. So which of these will increase when they mend more cars? A and B, says both Charlie and Harley. Percy says B and Jasmine says B and D. So let's have a look at the answer. I think you can be forgiven for thinking A, advertising in a local newspaper, because you think, well, if they advertise more, then they'll get more cars. But remember, that is the causality's the wrong way round. Advertising more causes more cars to come in. What we need is something that when they mend more cars, then the costs go up. So it could be, for example, courtesy car costs would be as a result of having more cars in the garage, whereas advertising causes more cars. So just be a little bit careful thinking about that. But I can forgive you for thinking that.
That's why those bubble quiz questions are so good, aren't they, Nicky? Because actually they
Absolutely.
present 2 or 3 answers that you're thinking, got to think a little bit more about in terms of whether they're applying to the question or not. Brilliant stuff, and thank you for your answers as always. So let's move on to the final activity of the live stream. So it's one of our what we call our on balance activities, because in your exam you're likely to be presented with a longer question where you're analysing, thinking about advantages and disadvantages. So in this case, I would like you to think about one advantage and one disadvantage, if you can, of a business that implements division of labour. So I said we'd come back to it, didn't I? Right back at the beginning of this live stream. So here we are with our final question of the day, an advantage and a disadvantage. So if you want to start by typing in an advantage, that would be great. That gives us something to chat about. An advantage and a disadvantage of a business implementing division of labour. So back to that first question, division of labour, where we take our workforce and instead of getting them all to do everything, we get them to do individual tasks or a series of individual tasks, and therefore they become more specialised in that activity and leave other activities to other people. Right, Jasmine's the first to come in. An opportunity for specialisation, increased productivity, so an increase in output per worker. Brilliant start, Jasmine. Charlie's also said improved productivity in the short term. But here's Charlie's disadvantage: could cause boredom and lower productivity in the long term. Like your answer, exactly what we're trying to aim for here. Percy has said likely to improve labour productivity as they repeatedly do the same task, and that was the point I was making in the first question. If you do something over and over there, you become better at that task. If you only do something once, you're less likely to be as good as the second, third, fourth time. Jasmine, disadvantage may be divided equally instead of by how and where it is needed. Absolutely. So the firm thinks about, I've got 5 employers, I need them all to do the same amount of work because I'm paying them the same amount of money, but it may not be the most effective way of using people. Janine, advantage. Less likely to get bored, so an increased motivation. So it's a flip in a way to what one of the previous answers was saying, which is actually if you're doing something that you enjoy, rather than a series of tasks, some of which you enjoy and some of which you don't, you actually might be less bored. So it's a good argument. That's a really strong argument, I think. However, might lead to greater worker turnover. Another phrase, a new phrase for us. That's coming from Percy again. Greater turnover, so people start to leave the employment because they're more bored, and therefore you've got to bring in new people, retrain them, and all of the issues that are related to high levels of turnover. Disadvantage from Janine, there may be a shortage of specialist workers. We don't know what this business is. It's not being applied here, but you're absolutely right. So we may not be able to find the people who are technically proficient enough to do the opportunities, the jobs. And Charlie, come in with that phrase. We talked before in the bubble quiz about economies of scale, and we've not really discussed diseconomies of scale. That's for another live stream, I guess. But yes, what we're talking about here are diseconomies of scale, that we have a longer chain of command potentially, and that can lead to all sorts of issues. Brilliant responses. Let's very quickly look at the ones that we've got, which actually are very much mirroring the ones that have come through on the live chat. Potentially improve recruitment, because we can attract very specialist workers. So if we require somebody to be an operator of a machine, or perhaps a coder for a computer program, then yes, we can start to recruit specialist workers there. And yes, there's that improved productivity, a sort of theme of today's live stream, increasing productivity, because the workers become more skilled. What are our disadvantages here? That exactly the one we were discussing as part of the live stream there, the live chat. Reduce morale within workforce as tasks become more repetitive, and that in itself can lead to a fall in productivity. Production process can be undermined by a small number of workers. That isn't perhaps one that we were talking about before. We have a chain of production, if you like, and we've split those different elements up into individual workers, and now the production at the end may be impacted by a production earlier on in the process if that worker's not very effective at their job. Love your answers though, guys. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Wonderful responses throughout the entire session though, I thought, Nicky. Thanks to everybody who's
really
been
clever
involved.
responses.
Yeah, but particularly the sort of longer ones that came in there. Right, we have one further live stream of this Easter break to bring to you. That's on Thursday, 11 o'clock. Nicky and I will be talking about the financial markets and money. That comes up on Thursday at 11 o'clock. So it'd be lovely to see everybody who's been here today joining us again Thursday morning. Do let your friends know as well about these live streams. And please do give us a thumbs up in YouTube if you found today useful. That helps us get our message out there a little bit more as well. A reminder that the PowerPoint that we've been using will be available as soon as this live stream finishes. And we hope that you found this useful. So from Nicky and myself, thank you to Nicky, by the way, from Nicky and myself, thank you again, and hope to see you again very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.